Got some more market catalysts coming this week in the form of CPI and PPI inflation data. Joining us to talk about that, the Fed, the recent volatility on Wall Street, maybe a little politics too, sir. Lazard CEO Peter Orszag, it's nice to see you.
Good to be with you.
We had what was a wild week last week, but it almost is as if it disappeared. Like it happened, it didn't happen. Given where we were at the end of the week, what's your takeaway from what happened?
Oh, I think the U.S. markets overreacted to what was not a terrible, it wasn't a good, but it was not a terrible jobs report. That's point one. Point two is there clearly was an unwind of the carry trade in Japan, and that's natural as the Japanese raise interest.
How cautious, though, are you right now about thinking about what we're walking into this fall? We heard from Brian Moynihan, who was on Face the Nation yesterday. He has always been, I don't want to say always, but he's been relatively bullish on the consumer for a long time, and he had this sort of hesitancy, I think, to some of his language.
Look, I think the good news is inflation continues to come down. That's a positive. The consumer has largely held up, although there are some signs of, especially for lower and moderate income families, some additional stress. But generally, pretty decent, as is the labor market. So I think it's pretty good. I think there is a risk factor coming from the Middle East now. But overall, I think the picture is actually pretty positive.
So when your clients who are making deals and thinking about what's going to happen this fall, are you saying go do it? Are you saying wait till the election's over? Are you saying wait till the Fed, cuts rates by 50 basis points? If you think it's 50 basis points or 25 basis points, what are you telling them?
I think most boards, most CEOs are saying we have to look past some of this noise like last week. Inflation continues to come down. The Fed will cut rates. I personally think it'll be 25 basis points.
25 in September.
We can talk about that.
Okay.
And with regard to the election, that the only thing that's going to happen is, if anything, the antitrust and regulatory environment will get better, not worse.
Under either.
Do
you believe that if Harris wins, that there's going to be a move towards the center as opposed to towards the left, or even remaining where the Biden administration might sit relative to the way people think?
I'm not sure, but what I do know is that the government continues to lose in court, at least especially on vertical integration cases. And so that's what's going to dominate even without a personnel shift.
Do you think that a personnel shift would be in the making?
I don't know. I mean, I think all of this sort of public talk about who's going to take which roles, et cetera, or who's going to get replaced is vastly premature. But again, on the substance, the laws haven't changed. The interpretation of the laws are what has evolved over the past few years. And the courts
right, but there is a chilling effect just by default if you have a certain, what do they say, personnel as policy.
Do I think it would be better if we had a different approach? Yes.
You think there should, no, but what I'm asking, I think, is a different question, which is one of the things that we've heard in the last 2 weeks, at least privately, from people who are close to the Harris administration, or the Harris campaign is what I should call it, that you're going to see a pivot in terms of her talk about the economy and her talk about regulation towards the center. Then there were people who saw the Tim Walz nomination or appointment to be her VP and said, oh, maybe that's actually a leftward turn. And then you got a lot more calls from other people saying, well, actually, that's a head fake. Don't think about that.
He's the most bipartisan person in Congress before he became.
Right.
Here's what I would say. I think talking about the personnel that will take which slots, you should leave that up to whoever wins this election. But what I will say is, I think it's clear that the Harris-Walz campaign, and if they win administration, is much more open to business interaction. And that goes back. The vice president has been meeting with business leaders for years. I've been involved in some of that. And so there is an openness to an interaction. Now, whether that, I think she should have the right to determine exactly what the implications of that are. But at least there's an interaction and a discussion.
You mentioned a couple of times that inflation continues to come down, which in most respects it does. We do get the CPI this week. It's maybe going to go kind of sideways a little bit. Do you feel as if the impression that inflation has come down is pervaded enough in terms of what average consumers are experiencing? Because that's been slow to change.
Yeah, that lags. But the biggest thing on inflation is the entire narrative and analysis has been wrong. Almost all of the inflation on the way up and inflation on the way down has been driven by the supply side and not the demand side, maybe 80% or so.
80%. But then how does NGDP grow 17%?
Because, I mean, again, what's happened is the pandemic came, pandemic went. That is the vast majority, even to this day, of what's happening in inflation. And so the entire narrative that it was, inflation was caused by excess COVID relief, et cetera, I think is increasingly turning out just to be wrong.
how do you get nominal GDP to grow 10% by supply shortages? How do you grow the nominal size of the economy 10 or 12 or whatever percent?
Because you have a combination of real growth and, yes, some inflation. But the question is, what caused that inflation? And it was not, if you try to parse out what's happening in the labor market, what's happening in supply chains, what's happening in margins, which, by the way, I think was not greedflation, but rather inventory management concerns that when supply chains happen or get disrupted, you need to be careful about what you're doing with your inventory to make sure that you're not alienating your consumers. If you put all that together, again, the vast bulk of what happened was inflation. Now, what's interesting about that is also on the way down, the vast bulk has been supply chain also, which means the implication is almost or very little of the disinflation is actually due to
So the Fed's been riding along.
The Fed tightening, I think, has had very little to do with the disinflation we've seen.
What is the sort of confidence, to the extent that you're a gauge of confidence in the boardroom? I remember Faber actually was asking me just last week, I was in Paris. He said, what's the confidence like of all these CEOs? And I said, well, it's interesting. At the beginning of the week, they were very confident. By the end of the week, they weren't that confident at all. What are you seeing? And I think that was actually, frankly, a function of their own stock price.
A little bit, but look, I think that at least in terms of deal activity, where we're seeing continued momentum, a lot of this has to do not only with confidence, but the underlying drivers. You've got massive changes in technology, a revolution in biotech. You've got the energy transition. You've got supply chains moving. Those are all big forces for thinking about how you reconfigure your business. And then, yes, you need the confidence to move forward, but that's not the only thing.